When you think of a surgeon, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Yeah, probably the blue scrubs, the mask, the cap, right? But what if I told you that's not just a uniform? It's actually a meticulously designed suit of armor. Today, we're going to go behind those sterile doors and really deconstruct this surgical shield.
And boom, this one sentence just sets the stakes so incredibly high for this whole explainer. This isn't about looking professional. We're talking about life and death. In an operating room, the absolute smallest, most invisible threat can have the most devastating consequences.
Okay, so to really understand the dress code, we kind of have to reframe how we think about the whole thing. The operating theater isn't just a room. It's an invisible battlefield prepared with almost military-like precision for a war against an enemy you can't even see. And that enemy, of course, is microorganisms. Now, what's the biggest challenge here? Well, the very people trying to help, the doctors and nurses, can actually be the carriers. These tiny invaders can be on their skin, in their hair, even on their personal clothes, just ready to breach the defenses at any moment. So what this means is that the dress code has this really complex, multi-part mission. It's a defensive strategy that has to do all of these things at once. It has to protect the patient from the staff, protect the staff from the patient, and protect the entire sterile room from the outside world. That's a huge job.
All right, let's start building this defense system from the ground up. This first section is all about the foundational armor. This is the standard issue gear that every single person, from the lead surgeon all the way down to a student who's just observing, has to wear when they enter the theater.
The foundation for all of it is, of course, surgical scrubs. You know, they get their name from the scrubbing in process before surgery, but this is so much more than just a comfy outfit. It is the very first clean barrier, replacing street clothes that are, let's face it, covered in all sorts of contaminants from the outside. So the first three reasons here make perfect sense. Cleanliness and sterilization are obviously key. But the color, this part is brilliant. It is not just a fashion choice. That light blue or green color actually helps reduce eye strain for the surgical team that's working under those intense bright lights for hours at a time. It's a fantastic example of form perfectly following function. Next up is the surgical cap. Now, it might seem simple, but hair is a major source of contamination, shedding thousands of microscopic particles. So this isn't just about keeping hair out of the way. It's about creating a total containment field for every single strand, and that includes beards and sideburns, to stop anything from falling into the sterile area. Then you've got the face mask, which is a critical two-way shield. It protects the patient by blocking any respiratory droplets coming from the staff's nose and mouth. But at the same time, it's also protecting the staff by shielding them from any splashes or aerosols that might come from the patient. And the integrity of that shield is everything. A mask's effectiveness just plummets if it gets wet or compromised. This rule really highlights the incredible attention to detail that's required. The whole system is only as strong as its weakest link. And the final piece of our foundational armor protects the entire environment from the ground up: shoe covers. They make sure that no dust, no dirt, or anything else from the hospital hallways gets tracked into this highly controlled, sterile zone, keeping the floor itself completely clean. Okay, now that we have the foundational armor in place, it's time to level up to the next layer of protection. This is the sterile shield, a specialized set of gear worn only by those working directly in the surgical field. We're talking the surgeons and the scrub nurses themselves. Worn right over their scrubs, the surgical team puts on a sterile gown. This isn't just another layer. This is the primary barrier. It's fluid-resistant to protect the staff from blood and other body fluids, but more importantly, it's completely sterile, creating an impenetrable shield between the scrubs underneath and the patient. And now for the final and maybe most critical point of contact: sterile surgical gloves. These are the absolute last barrier between the surgeon's hands and the patient's body. They are absolutely essential for maintaining what's known as sterile technique, a really strict set of practices designed to prevent any contamination whatsoever. And this comparison here is great because it shows a key distinction. Not all medical gloves are created equal. You can think of it like this. Non-sterile exam gloves, their main job is to protect the healthcare worker. But sterile surgical gloves are manufactured and packaged to be completely free of microorganisms because their number one job is to protect the patient. So, we have the armor. But you know, the most advanced armor in the world is totally useless without the discipline to use it correctly. And that brings us to the rules of engagement, the strict protocols that govern how you behave inside the operating theater. And these rules are absolutely non-negotiable. Jewelry can hide bacteria, long nails or even chipped nail polish can flake off and carry germs with them. And maybe the most important rule of all, OT attire is for the OT only. Wearing your scrubs out to the cafeteria completely defeats their purpose because you're just dragging outside contaminants right back into that sterile zone. So, after all of this, the gear, the layers, the incredibly strict rules, you gotta ask, why? Why go to all this trouble? Well, the answer is simple. The stakes could not possibly be higher. This entire system, this surgical shield, is all about one thing.
Because a failure at any single point in this chain, a contaminated mask, a forgotten piece of jewelry, scrubs worn outside, can lead directly to a surgical site infection. And these are serious, sometimes even life-threatening complications that are entirely preventable by just following the code.
After everything we've just covered, from the color of the scrubs all the way to the rules about nail polish, let's ask that question one last time. Is this really just a uniform? Absolutely not. And that's the core takeaway here. The OT dress code is not just a uniform. It is an active, critical infection control measure. It's a shield, it's a suit of armor, and it's a rule book for a microscopic war, all designed with one single goal: to protect everyone in that room and ensure